And first, we're going to go to Russia, where Russia has signed one of the biggest deals with African nations. This is a game changer, fellas. You better find out about this. Then we're going to go to Lesotho. Donald Trump has hit Lesotho at the highest level possible. The goal is to destroy this African country. You want to find out about this. What's up, everybody? I hope you're doing good. It's a beautiful day. Thank you very much for stopping by. You are very much appreciated. Well, we're going to go right to the point. Today, things are happening. We have good news and bad news. What do we start with? Good news? Let's start with the good news. Now, Russia and the three countries that you know, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, have come to an agreement, fellas. Wonderful agreement. Russia will supply these countries with military equipment and training. Let's clap hands. Pick up my coffee. Absolutely, that's Swahili, fellas. Swahili is the most spoken language in Africa. You better learn about this. I know you're new here. Swahili is spoken in DRC, Rwanda, Uganda, Tanzania, Burundi, Kenya, you name it. Beautiful language. It varies a little bit from one place to the other, but it's still the same language. You understand one another. And just imagine the entirety of Africa speaking Swahili, you know. It's going to make things easier. There will be less xenophobia, unless you're taking drugs to other people's country. But yeah, in other words, people will sort of trust one another. When you speak to somebody in a language they understand well, you're speaking to their heart. Let's get back on track. We have a lot to talk about today. Anyway, now, in Russia, they have agreed to supply arms, military training to the newly established joint force formed by Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso together.
We have common views on fighting insecurity and terrorism in our region.
On my part, I have stressed the Moscow's readiness to promote in all the ways possible the build-up the potential of the joint forces of the Sahel states, increase of their combat capabilities when it comes to national armed forces of each of the three countries. It also deals with the training of the military personnel and law enforcement officers.
So, for those of you who don't know, these three countries right here on the map, we always do geography here, making sure everybody's on track. This is Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. These countries have come together as a confederation. So normally there are three different countries. What do they have in common? They were all colonized by France. But then later on, they were like, okay, these French people are playing with us. They've been with us for a long time, but they're still manipulating us. You know what? We are pulling away from these other African nations. These other African nations are called the ECOWAS. They were all part of a group. These three nations say enough is enough. We don't want to be controlled. We want to take care of our people. We're pulling away. They pulled away. As they pulled away, they decided they want to work together. Why? Because they realized that alone you can go fast, but together you go further. So they've come together as a confederation, just a little bit like the United States of America. It's multiple states coming together. That's what makes America strong. Same thing for these people, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, and they're standing strong for each other. Like I always say, Africans like to call each other brother. Oh, that's my brother. No, I'm not your brother. Real brothers in Africa are these three countries, because brotherhood is about standing for one another. Brotherhood is about defending your supposedly brother. Brotherhood is about contributing to raise him up. When we ask you to stand for other people, you don't, but you want to call them brother. When we ask you to put money together to push somebody further, you don't want to do it, but you call them brother. When I ask you to join this group, personal group that's insiders, you don't want to join, but you want free videos, but you want to call me brother. I ain't your brother. I'm sorry. I'm not your brother. Let's continue. So according to Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, they will utilize existing military instructors in the three Western nations to build them. Three of these countries' foreign ministers went to Russia to discuss. They came back with a deal. The deal is very simple. Russia will provide weapons, military training for the army. Okay, that's one of the points. Number two, there's cooperation when it comes to agriculture. Russia will help these African countries to develop their agricultural segment with bringing in fertilizers in priority. Let me just remind you here that Russia produces some of the biggest fertilizers in the world. So they're going to bring fertilizers in this country at a very cheap price, at a priority level. Number three, Russia reveals its intention to open embassies in Niger. Congratulations. So you're probably asking yourself, doesn't Russia have an embassy in Niger? Because we hear about Niger and Russia and Burkina Faso. Like, yes. So Russia at the heart of the Cold War. In 1992, they closed the embassy in Niger and Burkina Faso. Why? Because they felt like they didn't have any discussions or any relation that was necessary with these countries. You know, I mean, you don't want to waste money. You want to save money, and you feel like, well, maybe I don't want to be friend with you like that. So we can see each other from afar. I don't want to steal anything from you. I don't feel like you're going to bring me anything right now in my life. I'm going to pull out my people so I don't have to spend money. Well, that's changed. Okay. Now Russia is returning to Niger. With Burkina Faso, Russia went back in 2003, because they realized that influence is very necessary. So Russia is ready to have this brand new confederation in agriculture, in weapons, and in trade. Congratulations. Pika mikono. Yeah. And now we're going to Lesotho, fellas. Lesotho, here is the country. Beautiful place, lovely people. Donald Trump has hit them with the harshest taxation possible. 50% tax on every export of Lesotho. 50%. What does that mean? 50% on everything Lesotho export to the United States of America. Well, you're certainly asking yourself, what does Lesotho export to the US? Well, Lesotho has one of the biggest denim productions in the world. Yes, the jeans that you wear, some of them come from Lesotho. Are you in America, my brother? Well, American companies are located in Lesotho, many of them, such as Wrangler, The Gap, Ralph Lauren. Yes, they are produced in Lesotho. Even South African companies such as Cedar Group. So let's take it easier, okay? Lesotho and America have an agreement. It's AGOA. It allows African nations to export goods to America tax-free, okay? Well, America says it's a way to help Africans. Some people believe it's a leverage for America to control people. Does it work? Yes, it does work. How does it work? It offers African nations an opportunity to export their goods. I'm talking about productive nations. I know some of you live in shithole countries. You don't produce nothing besides pastas. When you produce something that is valuable, you can take it to the United States of America and sell it at a normal price. In other words, you're extending your markets up to the United States of America. Now, Lesotho is one of the countries that benefit from this AGOA agreement. How? Lesotho produces denim or jeans, right? I like calling it jeans. Anyway, so the denim produced by Lesotho goes to America at a cheap price for American use. Now, why do American companies are stationed in Lesotho? You're probably asking yourself, why don't they just hire Americans and work from America? Well, it's very simple. In Lesotho, you can hire people at a very cheap price. Okay? They can produce good at a cheap price. Materials are good and a cheap price. So when they bring it to the US, they can make a good margin. As opposed to hiring Americans in America to make these same denim or jeans, it's going to cost much more money, right? Now, by hitting Lesotho with 50% tax, what's going to happen? I'm going to give you a very simple example. Let's say a pair of jeans costs $20 to produce and is sold in the US for $50. A 50% tariff means that an additional 10% will be added to the cost. So instead of $20 to produce initially, now it's $20 plus 50%. 10. You see, math. Math is difficult. You say, a lot of people like to talk, but mathematics is not easy. Let's continue. Let me repeat myself. Let's say we have $20 to produce jeans, okay? And you get 50% from Trump on Lesotho. What's going to happen? What's going to happen is you're going to need another $10 extra to produce your good. And this increases the total price consumers pay and reduce the profit margin for the company. So in other words, when you produce that, then Americans who buy those jeans have to pay much more money to acquire the jean they used to get at $20. You get that? So it gets more expensive. What are they going to do? The risk is, you know what? I'm not buying from you anymore because your jeans I used to buy at $100, now it costs $150. Let me go to somebody else. So that's risky for both consumers and the companies that are making this stuff. Now, what will the companies do? The companies like Levi's and Calvin Klein and all of that, they will try to find countries that are not subjected to Donald Trump tax in order to continue to produce and make good margin. In this case, it's probably going to be Vietnam or Mexico or other places, as opposed to Lesotho. Now, why is this bad? Because this is very bad for Lesotho. Because this export to the United States accounts to 10% of Lesotho's GDP. So it's a big industry. You know, Lesotho has about 11 factories in the country producing denim, and the majority of them exporting product to the United States of America, employing over 12,000 people. So when you raise the money, it means 12,000 people are out of jobs, and 10% of the money that the country is making is gone.
We are going to lose a lot of jobs due to this immediately, but we need to do something, and immediately for that matter.
Last year only, Lesotho produced about $247 million by exporting to the United States of America. You get it, my brother? That's the problem. That is the problem. And you must ask yourself a question. Why? I mean, let me just remind you here that Donald Trump a couple of days ago, or actually way before that, because he's done it twice, he said, we're sending things to Lesotho, a country nobody knows. You remember that?
$8 million to promote LGBTQI+. In the African nation of Lesotho, which nobody has ever heard of.
Why are we sending money to Lesotho, a country nobody knows, nobody has ever heard about? He was referring to the US aid that was being cut from Lesotho. You remember? Lesotho is one of the countries, unfortunately, with the highest level of HIV in the world. 1 out of 4 people in Lesotho is HIV positive. Therefore, many people in Lesotho need to use ARVs and some of those products and counseling and many other things in order to remain healthy. By stopping the aid from the United States of America to Lesotho, many health workers lost their jobs, and the product, the ARVs, all this stuff that you need to survive, were all taken away. So that was the first blow. The second blow is this one, 50% tax on Lesotho. And why is 50% important? Because that's the highest tax they have hit anybody in Africa. Madagascar, 47%, Mauritius 40%, South Africa 31%, Lesotho 50%. So you gotta ask yourself a question like, why big clap on somebody's head? I mean, it looks like a little brother. Why would you slap him so hard? You know what I mean? Like, why would you as a strong person slap that boy so hard? You're certainly asking yourself a question. Well, many people are asking questions too. But let me remind you here, fellas, that Elon Musk, maybe this will enlighten most of us. Elon Musk applied for Starlink in Lesotho a while back. Yes, fellas. Starlink licensing has faced some very difficult situation, okay? Opposition. Starlink proposed structure in Lesotho being entirely owned by Starlink Holding Netherlands, with a registered director being US. This contradicts Lesotho's tradition of balancing foreign investment with local participation. In other words, simple word, if you want to bring a big investment, now some sectors in Lesotho, if you want to bring it as a foreign company, Lesotho has to own 30% of the company. Very similar to what happens in South Africa. So they advocate Starlink to allocate up to 30% of its equity to Basotho citizens as a condition for licensing. You remember that? A while back, Musk went to South Africa asking for licensing for his company. South Africa has a law, a rule that says you need to allocate 30% equity to South African black people for you to function as a big company, telecommunication company. That's part of the law. I mean, if you go to a country, you obey the law. Well, Americans want to come to these African countries and impose the law or breach the law. South Africa refused. Later, after that, we heard that South Africa has been mistreating white people. Remember that? You genociding white people. Bad things are happening in South Africa. Now, I'm just reminding you, Lesotho's under 50% taxation from the US. And I'm not saying this is the reason why this is happening. I'm just saying they went to Lesotho. And Lesotho said, we're not giving you any license until you give us 30%. Musk said this was a racist move by South Africa. This was a racist law. But South Africa say there are many Fortune 500 companies, many international companies that are living by the rule in South Africa. Why are you special? Many companies from elsewhere are respecting the rule. Why is Starlink special? Why don't you want to do the same? Why is it hurting you? The other thing is this one. When you allocate your telecommunications to Starlink, you are giving away your telecommunication to a foreign company. There is an issue that you need to look into, okay? Because technically, security-wise, they have access to all your communication, access to all your data. Now, would you give a foreign company so much power into your communication and data as a free country? Let me know how you feel about this. Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso went to Russia to discuss. They came back with something very positive. a contract that will allow them and Russian military to work together in terms of training and equipment. They also agreed on agriculture, so they're going to help these countries be better agricultural. And Russia has promised to reopen the Niger embassy that was closed in 1992. Lesotho has been hit very hard by Donald Trump. They are sending a minister to go discuss. They don't want to hit back. Okay, so it's very difficult. That's why I say you need to diversify, my brother. You need to diversify your market. Many years ago, Europeans received help after World War II. France, Italy, Ireland, and more. They received help, aid, donations, so they can reconstruct because they were going through difficult times. Years later, they don't need the aid anymore. They don't need help anymore. They are self-sufficient. It's only African nations that always want to be help. You've created companies. You've created means of living through help and aid. Nobody does that. It's like when you see somebody begging in the street, it's been said, usually when you ask them, listen, do you need a job? They say yes. You give them a job. 2 days later, they go back to the street because they don't want to work. They want to be gifted. It's the same thing with Africans. Why would you, so many years later, still need money from America? Why would you, so many years later, even though they give you an opportunity to sell in the market, not diversify your market? If you put all your eggs in one basket, what's going to happen when the basket falls on the ground? You lose everything. Now, I hope this is going to be a lesson for most of these African nations. God bless.